Welcome back to Really and our the third part of our incredible conversation with Mr. George Knapp and
The credible George Knapp.
Quite credible
Yeah.
and incredible. Yeah, no, you're right. Credible. We'll go
Credible,
with that.
credible
Yeah,
with an incredible
and
story.
wonderful, as Dave also added. We were just starting to talk about.
We had been discussing. We'd been discussing the history of NIDS and Skinwalker Ranch. NIDS being the National Institute for Discovery Science. Right. That Edgar Mitchell was involved with, and Robert Bigelow had funded, and that had wound itself down because of inactivity from the phenomena itself. And you were leading us into what came out of that as a result of your book, The Hunt for the Skinwalker, having been read by a gentleman named James Lakatsky, and he talked to Jay Stratton, I believe.
Yeah.
So if you can pick the story up from there.
So Dr. Lakatsky is a rocket scientist, literal rocket scientist for DIA, has an impeccable record as an intelligence analyst, studies other foreign systems. He's trained as an engineer, and I think he has 2 PhDs. He's a smart guy, and he had the highest clearances in our country. And Jay Stratton, who had worked for Naval Intelligence, was also at DIA at that time. They had read the book, passed it around, got an interest in it. So Lakatsky asked permission from the DIA director, hey, can I go chase this a little bit and see if there's something to it? And they said, yeah. So he calls Bigelow, contacts Bigelow, comes out to Las Vegas. They fly together to the ranch and just look around. And within 40 minutes or so of visiting the property, Dr. Lakatsky has an experience that seemed custom designed for him. He's inside the ranch house. He's sitting at a kitchen table with the 2 caretakers, the Dietzes, and Robert Bigelow. And over in the corner of this kitchen, something appears right in the room that only he can see. Everyone else is pointed a different direction. And it's like Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, that album. Mm-hmm. Just like a tube that's kind of in an ampersand shape. That if you ever saw that album, that's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And it's glowing, and it's right there where only he can see it, and appears in this room. And he's wondering to himself, is this some kind of a trick? Are they trying to pull something on me here? But doesn't say anything until he gets off the property. He goes back to town, and then he draws it for Bigelow and shows him. I saw that while I was there. Oh, you saw something? Yeah. He says, I'm interested in this place and what's going on here, and I'm going to make a proposal when I get back to Washington. And he did. He goes to his bosses. He outlined a program for studying UFOs and related phenomena, primarily a technology program. They were interested in, how do these things work? How do you make a hole in the sky? It goes to some other reality or some other place or dimension. And what are these things flying in and out? Is it enemy technology? Is it hostile? Can we duplicate it? All those kind of questions. He proposes that to Senator Harry Reid. And it just so happens that Reid knows Bigelow because I had introduced him back in the NIDS days. He'd gone to that NIDS board meeting and had an ongoing interest in it. So Reid gets this proposal from Lakatsky at DIA. He goes to meet 2 of his colleagues who sort of oversee the black budget, Daniel Inouye, senator from Hawaii, and Ted Stevens from Alaska. Both of them said, yeah, I'm interested in that. Stevens had seen a UFO during his military career. Inouye said, yeah, he's interested in it as well. Let's get to the bottom of it. So they allocated $22 million for a program to be overseen by the DIA. The contract was put out. Bigelow lands the contract. Well, it is, I know a lot of people think it's rigged, but it did go out to bid. I think Lockheed was interested, but it was too small for them, $22 million. And it was supposed to be a 5-year program. Bigelow gets the contract. A week after he signed the deal with DIA, he came on Coast to Coast with me and announced it. And people forget it. He doesn't spell it out, but he said, look, I'm starting a new venture. I have an unnamed partner in this, and we're going to investigate UFOs. And if people had followed the trail of breadcrumbs, they would have known what was going on, but everyone ignored it, And so there it was out there. Mm-hmm. And then NIDS, the OSAP program is born. Bigelow creates a subcontractor company called BASS, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Systems, a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace, where he's building these inflatable habitats. They put out a call to hire people. Within a couple of months, they had a staff of 50 people, all of them with clearances ready to go. I mean, 50 full-time employees is the biggest UFO program that we know of that our government's ever had. Way bigger than Project Blue Book or Sign or Grudge or any of those things. Way bigger than Arrow.
Better credentials.
And better, yeah.
Yeah, this one actually wants to find UFOs.
Yeah, they do. So Robert Bigelow is a guy who gets things done. He's used to managing big businesses and his own empire. He's a hands-on manager, and boy, things move really fast. They hire 50 people, get them with clearances. They made special modifications to Bigelow Aerospace. They had a skiff installed, and they created a facility that would be able to handle special materials. So somewhere along the line, they were led to believe that they were going to get some of these metamaterials, things, without saying it in the contract, it's crash retrieval stuff. They were ready to get that stuff. And that
he's not just a billionaire trying to skim off some of $22 million.
$22 million is chicken feed.
Yeah.
He spent way more than that on the ranch and other UFO investigations, so it's nothing to him. He likes having government money that's going to fund this thing, of course, but it's not something he's getting rich at. They spent way more than $22 million in the course of the next 27 months.
You mentioned metamaterials. Was that based on any belief that there was something on the ranch that just hadn't been discovered yet?
No, nothing from the ranch. It would have been from somewhere else.
Got it.
Yeah.
You know, the implication was crash stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
And they fully expected to get some of that during the course of the study.
Yeah, because AATIP is a very expansive program. That's part of it is focused on the ranch, but it's much more expansive.
The ranch is just a piece of it. And it was like a living laboratory. It was sort of a bonus for Bigelow getting that contract, for Bass getting it. There's a place where we can put people and strange stuff happens, and we can actually have hands-on experience, assuming that whatever it is decides to play ball, which it did. So, you know, they have rapid response teams. They're going to go, they're going to create the world's largest UFO database, which they did. 200,000 plus cases in this database that they accumulated. They got files from other governments. They went to Brazil. They sent investigators to Brazil, in particular, to investigate the Colares incidents, where people were injured, where flying saucers attacked people and burned them with like laser beam type weapons. A case that really is still, the public doesn't have a great appreciation for. They got those files and other files. They got files from the UK, they got from Canada, and private collections from aviation groups. I mean, it's a gigantic pile of stuff. Dr. Jacques Vallée was in charge of creating what they called a data warehouse with multiple levels of information, collated by levels of credibility. They would weed out things that weren't supported by additional evidence. So random sightings that didn't have some kind of a stable base weren't included. And it was an amazing accomplishment in a period of 27 months. It was supposed to be a 5-year program, but that's not how it worked out. But in that time, I mean, they sent investigators all over the place, investigating new sightings, investigating old sightings, and peripheral activity. So strange things that happen in the periphery of UFO incidents that affected human health. That was one of the studies. I got a paper here. One of the things that AATIP did, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, that was what it was called. It doesn't have UFOs in the title. Doesn't really describe in any of the documents that created it. It's about flying saucers. It talks about technology, exotic this and that. And what they created was they farmed this out. Hal Puthoff assigned 38 papers to be written about various aspects of aerospace technology, future propulsion, warp drive, really exotic cutting edge stuff. They wanted it to be a baseline of what we know now about how things fly and how machines work, how to get from A to B, even if B is way, way out there, and to project it 50 years in the future. What we might know 50 years hence, what kind of advances humanity might know, so that you have a baseline with which to compare exotic craft that people see. You've got something that's performing way beyond anything that we've got now that's known to exist in this country or anywhere in the world, then it's something else. And in addition, they wanted to study the health effects of human biological tissues. So there was a pretty substantial document that was written that looks at hundreds of cases of really serious injuries, psychological effects, physiological effects, paralysis, electric shocks, heat, burns, perception of odors, all kinds of things involving hundreds of people, some of them really serious injuries. a few of which had happened in association with the ranch. The ranch was a tiny part of it, but it was an important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
These reports, those are coming through. These are being scientifically studied. They're under the umbrella of federally, funded, mandated. What was the response to that material?
Well, at first there was great support within DIA. There were 2 different DIA directors who oversaw it. They were all for it. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
When the word starts leaking out about how weird stuff gets, then trouble started. I think what really led to the demise of AATIP is they started asking, hey, where's that material we were promised? And they started knocking on doors. Where is it? We want to see it. They had heard these stories, as everyone else has heard, about crash saucers, about reverse engineering programs in aerospace companies. Let's have it. And I think the last stop they made was at the Department of Homeland Security. They were trying to find another home for it other than DIA because the writing was kind of on the wall. Harry Reid had written a letter. That's where the name AATIP first pops up. It was in a letter that was sent to an Undersecretary of Defense asking for permission to take AATIP into make it a special access program, a SAP, so that they didn't have to fight every year for its budget. It didn't have a lot of prying eyes. People wouldn't be looking at, hey, are you chasing poltergeists? Let's pull this money. That's what they wanted to do. And that letter was leaked to some folks in the Pentagon who were dead set against any kind of research into UFOs and weird stuff. Fundamentalist Christians in high positions who felt that by studying this, you were messing with satanic forces, that these are not aliens, these are demons. And we don't want to be messing with demons and invoke them and let them into our world as if they're not already here in some fashion or another. Not studying them would make them go away. I don't know. I don't understand the reasoning for it, but that was the initial opposition, that this is too weird. Other people who just thought, gosh, we shouldn't be doing, this is a waste of time, weirdo stuff at Skinwalker Ranch. Poltergeists, really? And then just people that wanted to steal the money and use it in their programs. But the final nail in the coffin was going after the metamaterials and the crash saucers and reverse engineering, and that the door got slammed in their face. They clearly knew they were onto something, that the reaction was so strong that this was a real thing. This is a real secret. And we now know in this other book that you mentioned, James Lakatsky admits that he is familiar with one craft, a particular craft. They managed to gain access to the interior, and this thing has no propulsion system that they can spot, no fuel, no exhaust system. How it flies, how it moves, what its purpose is, what its mission is, where it's from, they have no idea.
And Lakatsky had direct contact with this.
So Lakatsky is one of the co-authors of this, which is it's inside the U.S. government covert UFO program, initial revelations, a follow-up to Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
Right.
You and Colm Kelleher and James Lakatsky. And let's dig into that a little bit.
And one other question too, before when you're talking about the people within the military who viewed this as a demonic force, and that was their objection to studying it. Now, is that I've heard, I don't know a lot about it, but would they be like I know there's an informal group called the Collins Elite.
Yeah, that's the name we've heard. I don't know that that's what they called themselves. That's a name that's floating out there, but there is something like that, and we've had it confirmed. I've had it confirmed by multiple people that were on the inside of this thing and experienced it directly, had direct knowledge of it.
Yeah, not an official government organization or military organization, but
it's an old boy network.
But a collective of people, like-minded people who view this subject as being representative of demonic forces.
Yeah,
and sounds pretty old school to name yourself something like that. Feels like that's kind of
there's a variety of reasons people who had knives out for this kind of an effort, who don't want it to succeed.
Yeah, and obviously it seems like one of those groups are the people who have the materials.
Yeah, the people who've got the goods, the goodies. They don't want to give it up. There's a lot of discussion now.
And they don't want Congress to know about it.
They don't want Congress to take it seriously. So AATIP was knocking on doors and shaking the foundations of the secrecy that's permeated our government for 75 years, 76 years. And it upset a lot of people for a variety of different reasons. So the writing was on the wall. Lakatsky and others tried to find a new home for the program, and it was hands off. The writing was on the wall. When Harry Reid's letter asking to turn it into a special access program was leaked on purpose, that was the death knell for the program. Once enough people realized what was going on, they started asking questions. It's all over but the crying.
Yeah, and now as I understand, so Jay Stratton was very involved in setting up the organization of OSAP, right? And now, and AATIP is an adjunct study.
So AATIP was a nickname that Harry Reid in that letter gave it. They didn't want the name to be known. Lakatsky and others did not want the name OSAP to be known outside of a stovepipe, So they used that in a letter and sent it to the Undersecretary of Defense, and it got leaked, and then the writing's on the wall. So money gets pulled. Instead of a 5-year program, it lasted 27 months. But it met every goal that it was created to do. And it created a massive pile of stuff that the public has not seen.
Is that database still exists?
The database still exists, and the database itself is being used. I think Arrow now has access to it, and some other departments have access to it. But the reports, nobody's seen. There were the 38 DIRDs that were written. I released about 12 or 14 of them on my own, and just did it. And they were meant to be seen. They were circulated when they first came out on JWICS, this internal net of defense contractors and agencies. They were meant to be seen, and they were highly regarded. It was, thank you for doing this. So it wasn't like I was leaking classified secret stuff. The other stuff, though, they made more than 100 reports, some of them 200 or 300 pages long, analyzing Tic Tac, for example, and other cases like Tic Tac, Lakenheath. Some really good work, the nuts and bolts of flying saucers, how we think they work, and all that stuff. Not one page of that stuff has been made public. Now, we wrote about it in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. It took us 14 months to get DOPSR, what they call a DOPSR approval process, to go forward with what we published. A lot of things that we wanted in the book were taken out. And the same thing is happening with this latest book, as we had to get approval. And I think Lakatsky pushed it as far as he can in talking about the craft, that one craft. But eventually, we hope that stuff will come out.
And I just want to point out this. So you, as a journalist, you're privy to all of this information as it is occurring, as it is being accrued. Like you're kind of on the inside with these people that are running OSAP and doing these studies, and you're hearing all of this through all of this
bits and pieces.
History.
Yeah, bits and pieces. I would hear this and that here and there because I'm friends with a lot of the key players, and it's like I've told Jeremy Corbell over the years. The way you become perceived as trustworthy is to actually be trustworthy, and you are shared information. And the reason you get shared more information is because you don't spill it. You sit on it until it's like with the ranch. I didn't report on the ranch for 6 to 7 years until after I had known about it. With OSAP, it was longer than that. I'd known about it when the program was created. Bigelow told me. He told the radio audience without spelling it out. But so that was in 2008, September 2008. In December of 2017, a lot of this stuff comes spilling out in this New York Times story, although they got a lot of it wrong. In October of that year, 2017, Lou Elizondo steps forward. He appears on stage with rock star Tom DeLonge, who's a friend of mine. We'd been talking about these things for a long time. They have a news conference, announced the creation of To the Stars Academy. And 2 days later, Lou and Tom came to Las Vegas, had dinner with me and Robert Bigelow, showed us the videos of the Tic Tac and Gimbal and Go Fast. And so we knew it was coming. And it was a month later, I started hearing rumblings that the New York Times is now working on this story. Well, I'm saying, well, what the hell? I mean, I've been sitting on this story for 9 years, almost 10 years. Why don't I get to do it? And then I got a series of calls. One was from DeLonge saying, we're trying to get the New York Times to do this. If you spill it, they'll back off. Bigelow, same call. And the last call was Harry Reid saying, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But look, if you don't do the story and they do it, I promise you I'll give you the first on-camera interview as soon as it comes out. So I reluctantly had to admit I am not the New York Times. If I do the story, it's another UFO report from the UFO reporter in Nevada, and where's it going to land? If it chases the Times off, I figure I'll take one for the team or for the cause here,
Yeah.
and because I knew I could report on things that they won't know, and
Sure.
I
Yeah.
knew there'd be plenty of reporting still left to do, even if they break the initial story. Well, they break the story, and I see the name AATIP. That's the first time I ever saw it, that name, and I'm thinking, oh well, there it is. There's the story. AATIP, Bigelow, Lou Elizondo, all that, not knowing exactly at the time that it was wrong. You know, that it was wrong. AATIP is something that came after OSAP. Lou Elizondo saved it. I mean, he saved a portion of it. OSAP had $22 million created and managed by the Defense Intelligence Agency. AATIP was something smaller. It was like a confederation of people in the government. Lou was at the center of it, and they would analyze and talk about UFO cases, but they didn't have an office. If they had a budget, I don't know what it is, but it was good. They kept it alive. You know, they kept it going. Jay Stratton was part of that. And, you know, it was great. But when it comes out, the Times reports $22 million secured by Harry Reid went into AATIP, which it did not.
Right.
It went to OSAP. And people think that there's no distinction there. Well, there is. You know,
Yeah.
there's-
And can we back up just a little? Because we should maybe introduce another player in the story, because I'd be interested, because I've heard his side of this many times. But let's talk about Jeremy Corbell and how you guys wound up working together, and how how that came about. Because he's very much involved with this chapter of your career.
It came about because of John Lear. And look, I'm not taking all this credit for the events that have unfolded. I lucked out. If I had not overheard John Lear talking to Ned, none of this would happen. This series of dominoes that have fallen all stem back to that. Just me eavesdropping on that conversation, and then getting to meet Robert Bigelow, telling Harry Reid, introducing Reid to NIDS, all that stuff. Along the way, Jeremy gets interested in the Bob Lazar story. He hears me on the radio or something talking about it, maybe with Art Bell.
Yeah.
And he starts pestering me. He decides he wants to make a film. He's never made a film before. He starts reaching out to John Lear, communicating with him. Wow, your amazing story. I'd like to get to know you. He starts coming to Las Vegas for weekends, staying for days at a time at Lear's house, recording all this information, Lear's great stories, and at the same time, pestering me, calling me. I think he called for about a year. Well, I get a lot of UFO calls.
Yeah.
I used to take them, and I don't anymore. I don't answer my phone at all, because you never know when you get in a 2-hour UFO story and you can't get off the phone. So, and the volume of it is just too much. And I get maybe 1,000 emails a day, sometimes more than that. It's hard to keep up with it all. So I have people who are shields for me about UFO stuff. And they would take the calls from Jeremy, and I'd get these messages, and I was busy. Finally, he calls, and Ian Russell, my I-Team producer, he gets on the phone. All right, you hold for George Knapp and just listen. Let me give you some advice. Get right to the point. So Jeremy gets me on the phone, and he rattles out, talking a million miles an hour. And I want to make a film about John Lear, and I want to talk to you. And he tells me he remembers the conversation, that there was a long pause, and then I just spilled out like a download of the UFO 101 and Lazar and Lear and all that. And we had an ongoing conversation, and he kept pestering me and came to see me in Las Vegas on one of his trips to see Lear. And he's a likable guy. He is obviously has a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and we hit it off. And so, he's continued to work on the Lear story, and along the way met Bob Lazar and became interested in that. And then he was very interested in Bigelow and the ranch. We started making some trips there, thinking maybe that early documentary stuff that I had shot and never used might be incorporated into a film, which we produced in 2017, I think, or 2018. And then later, less than a year later, the Lazar film came out, and now Jeremy and I co-produce and co-host Weaponized, a podcast.
Yes, which everyone should watch.
Awesome. Weaponized is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. The best source.
But he's a great ally. He's unflappable. He works really hard. People either love him or hate him. On social media, UFO world, they're always giving him crap, even more than they give to me. But he's really a solid guy who works really hard and tries to get this story right. And it's tricky. It's a tricky world to navigate. there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and,
Yeah.
and a lot of disinformation and misinformation and false leads and blind alleys. And it's hard, it's hard work. But anyway, my overhearing Lear and then Jeremy connecting with Lear leads to me and him getting together. And he's been part of some of these investigations ever since.
Yeah. And so how do we connect? So he's now sort of working with you in some regards, and so you've just heard about AATIP in the New York Times. You've kind of fallen on your sword as a journalist and allowed this to go to the New York Times. And what happens next?
Harry Reid lives up to his promise. He gives me an interview like 2 days after the Times story comes out. And, we have been able to rekindle our ongoing conversation about UFOs and Skinwalker. Reid had called me a few times about Skinwalker. I would keep him appraised of what was going on and send him the book when it came out, and then would let him know what had been happening in the interim. I remember getting a call from the floor of the Senate. He's in the well of the Senate. I can hear Mitch McConnell in the background yammering about something. Hold for Harry Reid. I'm thinking, oh man, this must be something important here. Harry Reid's calling me from the floor of the Senate. And he just wanted to ask me about Skinwalker. He said, George, I'm thinking about sending some of my staff to the ranch, and they're worried. They think it might be dangerous or something. What do you want to tell them? And I said, well, it is dangerous, Senator. There are consequences for that, and we can talk about some of those consequences. Yeah. We had invited him, and he considered it for a long time, but he couldn't think of how he could go without it getting out. He'd have to use some kind of transportation. Does he use campaign funds? That has to be reported. Government funds? That has to be reported. So he was going to send staff a few times, and I don't think that ever happened either. But, he and I had maintained a friendship and an ongoing dialogue, and he had established contacts with Bigelow, and he was right in the thick of things for a long time. He gave me that interview, and then I got to meet Lou Elizondo again and did the first real long-form interview on camera with him. And he was telling me about AATIP, and I got invited by Reid to go to Washington in March of 2018. This is 5 months after the New York Times story comes out, or 4 months. And I was going to meet somebody there. He didn't tell me who it was going to be, but I had an idea. I had known the name Dr. Jim Lakatsky from the OSAP guys. I'd never met him, but I knew who he was and what role he had played in the program. And I go to Washington, and I'm doing like spy stuff. I changed hotels. I changed taxis. I'm thinking somebody's going to be following me. And of course, it was all nonsense. Nobody was, but I wanted just to be careful. I go into a meeting with Reid, and there's Lakatsky and a pile of stuff on the desk. And he gave me the download on OSAP and how OSAP was different from AATIP and why the two programs were not the same and where the $22 million had gone, and gave me an idea of what they accomplished. And he read me in, basically. I knew a lot of this stuff, but really, I'd never heard the name AATIP or OSAP. And he told me what the real name was, what it stood for, showed me some of the founding documents that had not been made public. And I realized, wow, this is a really big story. It's actually bigger than AATIP, and the origins of it, and how many of them, how these events all stem back to things that started in Las Vegas.
Because AATIP was sort of narrowly defined as interactions between military and
AATIP
UAP.
was military UFO cases.
Yeah.
Military information coming in from different military sources. They'd analyze military cases. OSAP was all that and much bigger, a lot bigger.
You talk about consequences. You've talked about how OSAP was shut down because things were getting weird, which leads me to ask, what is a hitchhiker?
So this term came from the ranch. People would go there and bring things home with them. And, it started during the NIDS era. It wasn't really as prominent as it became later, but NIDS personnel, people who went there and spent a lot of time, would bring things home. Now, I tried to. I didn't know about hitchhikers.
And you're not talking about physical things.
I brought physical things home because I wanted to engage with whatever it was. I'd bring little bits and pieces home, rocks and things like that to my home. Think, all right, let's go. I haven't seen anything. I wouldn't do that again.
But the people who had the hitchhikers.
That was bad. So this was like an attachment. This is something that people who visited the ranch, it attaches themselves to them and comes home with you. And it happened to Robert Bigelow, and it happened to Colin Kelleher, and it happened to me and other people who went to the ranch. They had, during the OSAP period, they had a number of intelligence officers, battle-hardened, tested, trusted people many of whom would carry weapons. They'd been in combat, tough spies, hardened people who would go there, and all of them had experiences, all of them, like some weird stuff that they would encounter on the ranch, a dark presence. There were 3 of them walking in the middle of the homestead at one point, and the temperature drops like 30 degrees in a second in this spot. And they sense a dark hole in front. It's already dark out there in the middle of nowhere. And this thing was felt threatening to them, which other people on the ranch have felt before and have directly had messages into their head, you're not welcome here. These 3 people all took something home with them. When they went back home, it followed them, and it manifested itself in their homes in a variety of ways, none of which were pleasant. There was a female agent, like a female James Bond, tough as nails, beautiful and experienced. She goes back from the ranch after seeing something really weird with Colin Kelleher and walks in the door of her apartment where her roommate, her fiance, is. And as soon as she opens the door, a bottle of wine flies from a rack on one side of the room and smashes on the wall on the other side.
Oh my God.
And then for months, they're tormented by these strange things, orbs, lights in their apartment, shadowy figures that they're seeing in at all times of day or night.
Both are seeing.
Both of them are seeing it.
Mhm.
And it's driving them crazy. The roommate leaves, breaks off the engagement, and gets the hell out of there. This other guy, we call him Axelrod, he goes home, and it spreads to his family. They start having trickster stuff where they got a great big dog that they have in the backyard, and they find it up on the roof, on the roof of their house. Dog didn't climb up there by itself.
No, cats do that.
Yes. Yeah,
They're
it's
very-
a husky. It was a Siberian husky. It didn't
Not
climb
good
up.
climbers.
I'm imagining my bulldog up at the top of my roof. Yeah.
Yeah.
They start having the same thing. The guy's kids are seeing these things in the house, lights, orbs, things moving around. The wife is doing dishes, looking out into the yard, doing dishes at daytime, and looks out, and there is a wolf standing on 2 legs, paws folded like this, leaning on a tree, looking at her. And she's thinking, what the hell is this? Now, am I really seeing this? The next day, she didn't say anything to anybody. The next day, the 2 sons are in the main room. They're looking out a window in the same area. They see this wolf again. Mom, they're screaming, there's a wolf on 2 legs out in the yard. She comes running in. They see this thing. It looks at them and takes off running on 2 legs, on 2 legs, kicking up leaves down the street.
This is the family of a high-level intelligence
guy,
officer.
very experienced guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely trustworthy, trusted by our government with national security matters. Absolutely. This goes on. It's still going on.
Still going on.
It's still going on.
It's 13 years later.
Yeah, and they're still having experiences.
They're still having experiences.
You
Yeah,
mentioned
including
you had
the
it.
wolf. Is
I
that?
don't know about the
Well,
wolf,
that's-
but the things.
I would at least want that
shadow
to go away.
figures in the house.
Shadow figures.
Things
I
Yeah.
want it
moving
all to
around.
go away.
Yeah.
You said you had an experience.
My wife
Yeah.
did. Now, I've never seen anything, not at the ranch and not at home, but she started seeing she had these blue orbs in the sky. I mean, right, we have a courtyard and sit out at night and look at the sky. And she was yelling for me and I didn't hear her. And she goes running downstairs. You got to come up here. These blue things are in the sky. By the time I get up there, they're gone, which that's cool. I hope they come back and I see them again. And then there was another experience that was not pleasant. Is something got on top of her.
Mhm.
In our bedroom, and it's real. She's awake. That same thing happened to Mrs. Bigelow,
Mhm.
and Colin Kelleher's wife. Same thing. She had a similar experience, and it's not fun, and it's not funny, and it's real. you
And
know?
it seems like a conscious choice to target the spouse, the loved one
Yeah,
of
that's
someone
right.
who has seen something, not uncommon, with gangsters.
Yeah.
That, you might not be afraid for yourself, but what if we do this to your wife?
Yeah. I know it's weird.
Yeah.
There's similar parallels in poltergeist and ghost research. I don't know
But-
how much credibility.
yeah.
That's not my field.
But it implies a conscious decision making
Yeah.
behind the phenomenon.
And it was almost viral in how it spread. Like in that one family back east, mom, the kids, then the kids' friends started seeing stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the power of it dilutes the further out it goes, but it's Colum, who's a biologist, it's microbiology. he had compared it to viral spread. We don't know what that is. Don't understand it. It certainly adds an element of weirdness that does not help the credibility of the whole thing. It's been a source of considerable scorn and derision in people who read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. They're poltergeists, hitchhikers, dino beavers, all that stuff. But no one is happy about reporting this. But what are you supposed to do? Leave it out? Oh, it's too silly.
Exactly.
You have to leave it out.
Yeah. Just because it's complicated. I mean, it's obviously complicated. There's no logic to what's going on there. And so, you're under an obligation to report it, and it makes it a target, but it's the most, I find, just kind of disturbing and fascinating, some of the stuff that was. Now, is it an exclusively Skinwalker phenomenon, or does this happen to other experiencers?
Don't know. I mean, well, actually, it does happen to other ones. Kenneth Arnold, the first guy to see UFOs, his sighting in 1947 kicks off the modern UFO era. People think that was just a flying disc, flying saucer kind of an incident. It wasn't. His family said he was tormented by the same kind of activity, poltergeist type weirdness in his home for the rest of his life. Some of the pilots, I think, from some of the most famous recent cases have had ongoing experiences as well. They got too close to something that was too strange. Now, does the propulsion system, whatever it is, of these exotic craft tear open some fabric of reality and let something else in?
Well, it's interesting. It robs us of knowledge, the fact that becomes the sort of you don't go zone. And it's interesting, like I think when we were talking to Leslie Kane, she would talk to all these pilots and she talked to generals and was, of course, trying to keep, I think we'd asked her, was there any additional phenomenon going? And it was sort of like, yes, but for the story, it was just good, because it just opens up a kind of can of worms.
She and Ralph Blumenthal steered clear of things that they thought would cloud the issue.
Yeah, well, there's a wide variety of ways to look at that.
Yeah.
I understand that. I understand, and it's probably would have been a really heavy lift for them. I applaud them.
Yeah.
Look, if they hadn't done that story, that changed the world. So I applaud it. It got things wrong. The explanations of why they got it wrong are multifaceted.
Yes.
But the record has been cleared since then. And it's not AATIP versus OSAP. There's no conflict there. It is a seamless transition. Lou Elizondo is a hero for coming forward with that stuff.
Yes.
It's not him versus Lakatsky. They're two different programs that flowed from each other. Both were real. Both were important. And they're not at loggerheads.
Yeah. Well, in your interview that you and Jeremy put out with Jay Stratton, there was like that through line of Jay sort of organizing both of these programs.
Jay was there when Lakatsky started off with the OSAP program. He was there helping Lou Elizondo with AATIP, and then afterward he was pulled back in. Just when he thought he was out of UFO world, pulled back in after the New York Times story comes out. He's pulled in because he has some expertise in this. Hey, we need you to head this up. And he becomes the head of the UAP task force, which did some really incredibly important work, credible stuff for the time period that it existed. He puts together this 22, 23-minute briefing document that had the best video and photographic evidence. And he did this. The briefing itself was classified. However, not all the images inside the briefing were classified. So Jeremy Corbell and I would occasionally get some things, not from Jay. Jay has never leaked anything. So we got some of those images and have made them public. And I'm sure it was an embarrassment to Jay, but he owned up to it. So when we would publish these things, the proclivity of the Pentagon is to say, we're not commenting, or it's not real, or they try to discredit it. That's what they've always done. Dismiss it, belittle it. While he was in charge of the UAP task force, these images come up. He owned up to it. He told them, hey, that is real. That's from this report. It's an unknown, and we have investigated it. Yes, that stopped. When Jay and the task force left, when the task force is given its most important job by Congress, write up a comprehensive report of where we are on this investigation and give it to us in 6 months, they decided, Jay, we need to move you over here into this job, and took him out. Now, he was high up. He had clout. Yeah. They left that UAP task force with no staff to speak of. Travis Taylor, Dr. Taylor, we now know from Skinwalker Ranch, that TV show, was the chief scientist for the UAP task force, which I got to break that story after we went to Huntsville or 2 years ago or so, and he's working with Jay and telling him about these weird things that are happening in his life because of things that had happened at the ranch.
Yeah.
And so they started working together on the task force.
And somebody else gets hired, or not hired, he's already on staff at another division of American intelligence, but he gets the job of becoming the inside investigator of UAPs, and that turns out to be David Grush. Is that correct?
David Grush, yeah. So while the UAP task force is under Jay Stratton, he's reaching out to other aspects of the intelligence community. He wants help in figuring this out. He wants to know who knows what. So we've heard these stories forever about crash saucers, reverse engineering, metamaterials, all that. It's what, in essence, was the final nail in the coffin for OSAP. They wanted that stuff. They'd been told they could have it. And when they went looking for it, the door gets slammed in their face. Jay Stratton gives a job to David Grush. Grush is working for the NRO, the National
Reconnaissance Office. Yeah,
right. He's working in very secure positions, has high-level security clearances. Jay Stratton gives him the job of finding out through special access programs who's got what, and Grush goes to work.
And he's got the clearances and is read in on something like 2,000 SAP.
Something like 2,000 programs that he looks at. He goes and investigates it. He interrogates witnesses in these special access programs, and he finds it. He finds the goods. He has people who tell him they've had hands-on experience with these saucers, with reverse engineering, with exotic technology that we did not make. We're taking this apart, trying to duplicate the technology. It's stashed away here, here, and here. Specific buildings, programs. He knows where it is. He gets sworn statements from these folks. And as soon as the word gets out, filters out that he's working on this, bad things start happening to him.
Well, I guess I could just ask, how did you meet David Grush?
So it was June of 2022. Jeremy and I were going to go to Huntsville. They were head of a conference. The SCU organization has a really good conference. There's a great lineup of speakers.
Which is the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies,
Yes,
right?
UAP Studies. It's Huntsville, Alabama, based in Rocket City there. And that also happens to be where Jay Stratton had moved, where Travis Taylor lived. They both were working for a company called Radiance Technologies. I think Jay got hired first, and then he brought in Travis. Radiance Technologies is a defense contractor. They got offices in 17 states at U.S. Air Force bases. They do high-tech stuff, and they specialize in reverse engineering. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
And
Okay, let's just. I got to read. So we have Jay Stratton, who is a top-level naval intelligence officer, has been covering this UAP topic off and on for 20 years. Was highly top secret in this for quite a while until recently. And then Travis, who is both sort of lead researcher for the reality show Skinwalker Ranch, has security clearance and is also
was working on
a real optic
UAP
scientist,
task force.
physicist, and so forth, and working on the UAP task force. I'm just the collision of sort of reality TV and real intelligence and government and all that. And I guess one side thing, so it vouches for, in your mind, the reality of what they're doing on the show, just as a side thing.
I mean, Travis is a serious guy.
Yeah.
He's a real guy. He's had security clearances and worked for the Department of Defense for 20 years, since he was a teenager. Worked on some really good stuff. He is a smart guy.
Yeah. And Jay Stratton has actually gone public more, and he's appeared on the Skinwalker TV show this past season.
And you say they're working together, because we do want to get to the Grush thing. They're working together at a reverse engineering.
A company that specializes in reverse engineering. And Jay Stratton also had a specialty in reverse engineering, not just technology, but situations. He would reverse engineer particular national defense strategies and situations. So that's what he does. That's what he always was good at. Along the way, he got stuck into some UFO programs as well. OSAP, AATIP, UAP Task Force. But they both end up in Huntsville working for the same company. That company has bases in 17 states, offices attached to U.S. Air Force installations, including right here, Nellis Air Force Base. And Wright-Patterson, by the way.
And Wright-Patterson.
Do they have a UFO?
That's what I asked him. I said, hey, you guys, this is really interesting. Can I come down? Can we see your company? Would the company president talk to us, or somebody from a spokesperson? And they said, call back, and yeah, they will. So we went to SCU to be at this conference, and there were multiple objectives. I wanted to see if I could get Jay Stratton on camera, and we did. and we got him on camera, and we used it at part of it. Piece of it,
yeah.
and
Hopefully more
weaponized
is
in the
coming on
podcast.
that, because it's a great interview with Jay Stratton.
There was a lot more that we did not use. And then we also got Travis Taylor at that time, and he revealed to us and then subsequently to the world that he'd been the chief scientist on the UAP task force. And then he introduced us to the head of Radiance Technology, who gave us a tour around part of the plant. There was a lot of stuff goes on there that we were not allowed to see because it is classified work. And so I asked him on camera, I say, "Are you guys building a flying saucer? What are you doing down here?" He says, "Well," and he kind of smiles, and we'd like to, we'd like to take, you're reverse engineering something? Well, yeah, we'd take that contract if we got it. No, it was like an open solicitation. If you got a flying saucer that you need to take apart, bring it on down.
Yeah, I didn't bring mine, but yeah, I mean, do people have them just to, okay, that's
All right.
I don't know.
So
that's
interesting
what
and
they're doing,
wild.
but
Yeah.
if I had one, I'd take it to them.
Sure. There's a lot of interesting coincidence. Yeah, a lot of serendipity there. And
all of those threads, by the way, all lead back to Las Vegas. But, one way or another. So I'm going to SCU. I want to see the conference. I hope to get Jay Stratton on camera. We luck out and we do that, and we get to interview Travis as well and learn this about him. We do a story about Radiance Technologies. And I was told that there's a chance that somebody else is going to introduce themselves to us at this event. And sure enough, I'm sitting at the bar, and Jeremy has a photographer along who is shooting a cutaway of me sitting there at the exact moment that Dave Grush walks up and introduced himself. And we started a conversation. And we spent more time with him away from the conference and got the lowdown on what's going on in his life. And he shared with me that day, the next day after we had met him, the complaint that he had filed with the Inspector General for the intelligence community. He was already getting grief. He had started this investigation at the behest of Jay Stratton, had done his job as requested by his employer, the government, had found out there is, in fact, evidence of crash saucers and reverse engineering and hidden goodies inside special access programs. He'd reported it up the chain through the proper channels, and he starts getting shit for it. They start messing with his life.
And this is an investigation that he had spent 4 years on, I believe.
Something like
right?
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's that long, but something like that.
What's the nature of the messing?
They start to pull his security clearance. They're threatening that. There's rumblings about dark things in his past. He's under some surveillance. He knows that they're messing with him. We met him there at Huntsville and got to know him. 2 months later, Jeremy and I are invited to speak at the Star Trek convention.
Mm-hmm.
Rod Roddenberry, son of Gene Roddenberry, is a friend of Jeremy's from childhood. They said, "Look, we're going to show the Star Trek crowd about UFOs, give a presentation." Great. Well, we tell Grush about it, and he flies out for it. He's a Star Trek fan, like many of us are.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet him at this event and spend 2 days furthering the conversation. He does not stray over the line. He does not spill national security secrets, but he did help us understand the big picture on things that are now public. He goes back. He leaves here on a Sunday night. Monday morning, he reports to work. He's met by some guys, armed security, that escort him out, stripped of his security clearance, suspended from his job pending an investigation, and that he had spilled secrets, that he was his character was suspect, that there were, that maybe there were mental health issues, and he's floored by it. Not entirely surprised, but really upset about it. So for the next several months, he's like in suspended animation. He's fighting to clear his name, get his job and his security clearance back, and he does. He'd already reported this stuff to the Inspector General, so they knew what was up, and they issue a ruling that, look, this is serious stuff. This is real. We believe him, and this has to stop. So
This retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
Retaliation is real.
Yeah.
And it's timely. This matter is timely, and because he's already submitted all kinds of sworn statements to the Inspector General.
Was Jay Stratton able to help him in any of this?
Jay Stratton was removed from his position. He'd
So
already
he
been
doesn't
taken out of the UAP task
And
force.
when you're being
Wow,
accused
so it's
of,
almost like separating.
Yeah, and if he's being accused of leaking confidential material, it's not just his job that's at stake, it's his freedoms at stake as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so the stakes were high for him. He followed the proper procedures. He did what he's supposed to do. He walked between the lines and had followed the procedures set out by a whistleblower law that had been crafted in large part by the guy who became his lawyer, Chuck McCullough, the former Inspector General for the intelligence community, who's not entirely unfamiliar with this playing field, I would say,
Mhm.
and who has represented him, who was there at the congressional hearing in July, sat behind Dave Grush, sandwiched between me and Jeremy Corbell. And all through that hearing, every question that gets asked of Grush, Chuck is barking, no, don't answer that. You know, he's
Really?
yeah. There was some places that he wasn't supposed to go.
Can we just say like what an amazing accomplishment, and to see you there behind David Grush, and like what a testament to the work you've done over 40 years. How far out on the diving board you were before any of this, you know.
From eavesdropping on
John Lear and Ned Day,
to sitting in a congressional hearing. What was that?
Like no other in the history of mankind.
I'm watching it on TV at home, and I'm like welling up with emotion just seeing you there.
There was a moment, for sure, that I realized, holy crap, this is real. You know, and I've said it before. I never thought I would see all this stuff in my lifetime, because I've been banging my head against the wall for a long time, and it's kind of been a long slog, a lot of it. But it was amazing, and I am still the pessimist in the room, though.
Mm-hmm.
The keepers of the secrets are better at their job than I and people like me are at ours, and they're not going to give this stuff up. You know, Dave Grush told it to that congressional committee, and the members of that committee were intent on having further hearings, getting a select committee created, and having subpoena power to go after this stuff. They know where it is, or at least where it was. I'll believe it when I see it. I think they'd have to get that stuff at gunpoint before anybody's going to give it up. The Schumer legislation that's proposed is very encouraging. It's a carrot and stick kind of thing. Look, if you turn it over now, all is forgiven. But if you don't, you're not going to get more government contracts. Whether they enforce that or not, I don't know. Is that enough to get it back? I don't know.
There's felony enforcement built into the Schumer legislation.
Well, I'm hopeful that it passes. I'm hopeful it passes in that form. But already the forces on Capitol Hill are pushing back.
And we talked about this before. There's a fellow named Mike Turner. Representative Mike Turner from Ohio. And he is an interesting constituency.
Yeah, he represents Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
He's a movie villain. Let's be honest. He's a movie villain. Come on.
He's the mayor of Jaws who says Amity Island, those beaches will be open. Well, he's reportedly told members that there aren't going to be any more hearings. There's not going to be any select committee, and he opposes it.
Well, and he wasn't even shy about saying that that it will be embarrassing to Department of Defense.
Yeah, well, that's why he's been quoted, and he's also made comments about Grush. He's gone on television and said, I really find it amusing, or it's so entertaining when these people don't know what they're talking about come forward with statements about UFOs. I think Dave Grush knows a lot more about UFOs than Mike Turner does. Yeah. Or maybe not. Maybe Turner does know. Yeah. Has decided which side he's going to be on this. But, if there is any way in hell that those defense contractors and the Pentagon can use the considerable clout and influence they have on Capitol Hill to stop this process, they will do it.
Well, they are using the fact that he is following the rules against him. Yeah. Because they keep holding up, every time you ask him a question, he says, that's classified. And people who know better, people like Mike Turner, who knows better about the nature of classified information and what you can and can't say, and he must know what David Grush can and can't say, but still he's using that observance of the law that David Grush is sticking to against him.
We've heard there's other whistleblowers in the pipeline, and certainly you know more about this than we would. Has what's happened to David Grush? I personally, from a civilian standpoint, I don't feel like they've really laid a glove on him in terms of actual, they made this terrible attempt to smear him. And we spent a whole hour and a half on the podcast just saying how kind of wretched that was as the son of a veteran and all that. Just how dare they kind of try to call out PTSD as some way to not believe someone or take away their credibility. I thought that was disgusting.
Well, it's sort of like what happened to Lazar. He had a lot of bad things happen in his life, things that he allowed to happen, that were real, but got blown out of proportion, and he got slimed. And I think anybody who's a whistleblower can see what the potential is, and they have to wonder, what did I do back in high school? What was that girl in college? And, what kind of scandal, what kind of bad habits did I have or something like that? Because whatever it is it'll come out
Yeah.
if you go forward. So,
Yeah.
Is it having a chilling effect, do you think?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Especially when combined with statements from the director of AARO, the current UFO program. We've seen no reliable evidence of anything that defies the laws of physics or alien technology or whatever terminology he used. We know those whistleblowers have given a testimony. We know that he's supposedly seen it. And the fact that he says he does not find it credible does not encourage people to come forward
No.
and spill more beans.
No. And after 40, 50 years of research and volume, it's sort of absurd. It's an absurd statement, but it's a purposeful statement, and there's clearly a motive there.
Seems like it,
Yeah. And even if you just look at the David Fravor testimony, I mean, almost anyone would consider that credible evidence of something that is defying our known understanding of physics.
The Tic Tac case is incredibly important, maybe the most important case of all time because of how well documented it is. That's not our technology. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah.
That was in 2004.
Mhm.
If it's ours, where is it? When are we going to break that open?
Yeah.
The same things were flying around in 1947. We've been keeping it in a hangar since then. We've been flying them, building them. It's Chinese spy drones. What is it? That's not our stuff. Well, we know it's not our stuff, and it's not Chinese, and it's not Russian. It's from somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's the mystery. You can say it's aliens, non-human intelligence, but I've been pretty far up the food chain, and I don't know anybody who knows for sure what the answer is.
Yeah. And whoever has it doesn't have to worry about any known adversary.
Yeah, I mean, you get that technology. If you can build one and fly it, you win.
Yeah. And that's what, like David Fravor said in his congressional testimony, said, there's nothing we can do to combat this.
Yeah, right.
There was something I saw, it might have been another interview you were doing, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the exact, where you were sort of saying because our feeling, I'm sure all our feeling is disclosure will happen. It'll happen somehow through academia, through science, maybe the government, but it's happening. Let's say it's just happening. People are believing more. There's so much evidence. There's so much out there. The work you've done, the leaks in the dam, it will give way in some capacity. But you had a quote that was kind of, you were like, well, what if it's not great? What if it's not a great thing? And I'm wondering,
you've been thinking about this a long time.
I was like, what was there any particular conversation that prompted that?
Bits and pieces here and there. But I mean, there's some fairly dark scenarios that could end up being the explanation of why the cover-up started and why it continues. I'm not giving them an out. I'm not, because they've lied and distorted and misled the public, Congress, all of us, about the nature of this phenomena, what we know and what we don't. I think maybe there might be some good reasons for it. Maybe the explanation is so unsettling that it really would cause things to hit the fan, that people could not handle it. Let's say, it's we're an experiment, and time's up. We're a simulated reality. I don't know that it makes that much difference whether we're simulated or not. Yeah. Some days feel more real than others. I know that. That we're property. Mm-hmm. That we're a agricultural commodity, but we're needed for something that they milk out of us, or there's something more exotic than my limited brain power can come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe.
Well, I was gonna say, when a laboratory experiment on rats ends, the next phase isn't good for the rats. It's not like rats don't get a nice retirement home at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, my job is to try to figure it out and tell stories, and if I can get the information to tell it, and people have asked me at some point, well, what if? And I don't know the answer to that. I've always reported the things when I can, when it's confirmed and it's ready to go. But if confronted with something like that, something existential level reality, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think I've been sort of paying close attention to this for probably really close for less than 10 years. And with all as interested and as intrigued and excited as I'm about, I know that there's a certain part of me that feels a deep-seated dread about this subject. Do you have that in you?
Somewhere down there, yeah, for sure. I still keep plugging away at it, but yeah, there's a feeling a nagging little voice inside my head that says this doesn't end well. I don't know.
That maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe that coin flip might have been better if it had come up Hawaii.
Hawaii's always there, you know. Hawaii's
Yeah.
a lovely
Do you ever
lovely
think-
destination.
Yeah, do you ever think about that? About the life you would have led if the
I don't know where I would have ended up or what I ended up doing. I wouldn't have been a journalist. I don't know what I'd be doing, a bartender or
Your
something.
surfing
maybe.
would be incredible.
Yeah.
you know, at this point.
But you know, like I said, it's amazing the series of coincidences and synchronicities that all stem back to Las Vegas. A conversation overheard with John Lear, and then meeting Bigelow and Reed, and you know,
in all of your travels, and as we wind up this incredible talk with you, and thank you so much again for doing this, is there a single piece of evidence that stands out to you that just kind of locked in a belief that this is is there a single piece of compelling evidence that you think back on as like, yeah, that pretty much blew my mind?
a couple things. One is what I already mentioned about the paper trail. There is a paper trail that lays it out pretty firmly and strongly and very clear and direct language. This is real. It's from somewhere else. It's not us.
Right.
That's our government talking to itself behind closed doors, thinking that it's never going to get out.
Right.
Mhm.
That's one. Two is people I know well who have been read in, who have been told, here's where the stuff is. This is what it is. This is what we've got. They're not making it up. They were allowed that information for a reason, and it's real, and they know where it was, if not where it is. That was a sort of a moment for me when I heard that directly from people that I know really well. You know?
That would do it.
Yeah, and
That
I
would
know
do it.
And I think you and I know Lou Elizondo. When he speaks of it too, there's a deep sobriety and somberness that comes over him when he talks about where this is heading.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know. You
Yeah.
know, they did that Brookings Institute report a long time ago that looked at what if we found out there was an intelligence and another alien civilization more intelligent than us. You know, when you are discovered by somebody else, it's, you know, Columbus Day today. We're recording this. We know what happens to the
Yeah,
natives who
it's
get
happened.
discovered by a more advanced civilization. It doesn't end well.
It's happened on this
So-
planet thousands of times to different
Yeah.
cultures. You know, they couldn't.
I like to be optimistic. It's not my nature. I saw last year, or months ago, we had 3 UFOs shot down in the course of a couple of days. We know one of those is a balloon. The other 2, we don't know for sure what it was, and the public was really interested in it for a couple of days. And then it's like, okay, what's on TV?
Right now.
When's the
very
Barbie
easily
movie coming out?
distracted.
And
Yeah.
so maybe I'm short selling the public on its ability to roll with the punches.
Mhm.
Or we just have to not underestimate the ability of other forces to distract and to dissuade and to discourage people from thinking about this, because you don't want to become that, as I've turned Tom into, that crazy guy at the party who
It's happened. It's happened now. I warn everybody. I'm like, how much do you want? Like, you want a 2, a 4, like 8, like in terms of how much dialed in
Yeah.
now. I feel like
Well, it's Whitley Strieber said the first time I ever interviewed him, 1989 or 90, he says, look, the true architects of the secrecy are them, whoever they are.
yeah.
They are the ones that have misled us. Secrecy has been their MO since the beginning. We get little tiny glimpses of a reality that we do not understand. They could land on the White House lawn. They could make some announcement, unless we're just so far below them. It'd be like us talking to ants.
Mhm.
They're the ones that have kept this mystery going. Our government has been complicit in it, and other governments have as well, but they're not being honest with us, whoever they are.
yeah, and they can
That's
and perhaps will be the ones who make
Yeah.
the final call.
Well, it's not a good example to set here. It's not exactly an open sort of dialogue between us and them, whoever
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. Well,
Well, what is not a secret is the incredible legacy you are leaving and have given us, and the impact on the culture that your reporting has left. And this has been
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, wonderful. But although I will leave you with one other thought. I've seen a lot of, in Hawaii, a lot of leathery old hippies who take tourists out fishing, and they look awfully happy.
Yeah. That's. I'm not closing that door yet.
But yeah, this is, I think when this history does get written, the contribution you've made and the thread that is George Knapp
Well,
is going to be really significant.
I've been lucky. You know, it's a lot of it is just luck, just being at the right place at the right time. It's been a heck of a ride.
Yeah.
And I'm not done. I mean, we got a lot of stuff to do. You know,
you've got. I know you've got projects coming. There's more information that's going to come down, become public, and I think you're going to be at the heart of all of this as long as it's going on.
Yeah, we can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait to read the new book,
Yes.
which is Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Program: Initial Revelations, sort of the follow-up to Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which gave me and my wife nightmares. But really
job
interesting.
well done.
Yeah, you did it. No, it was really fascinating. And
and of course, everyone should be subscribing to
Weaponized.
the Weaponized podcast.
Oh yeah, Weaponized is fantastic with Mr. George Knapp and Mr. Jeremy Corbell, and we're super grateful for this. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Well, thanks, guys. Don't
Thank
get
you,
arrested
sir.
while you're here.
All right.
I'm gonna stay away from Dave because that's what you got to do.
Thank you so much. Now I want to look through some of this stuff.
Yes, exactly. Cheers. We'll see you soon.